This is Me, I Am Mental, the podcast. A quick disclaimer. The content you find here is neither intended to be therapy or diagnosis. It is provided for educational, informational, and entertainment purposes only.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome once again to yet another episode of Me, I Am Mental, the podcast, where we endeavor to bring you factual, credible, useful, and engaging information on mental health. My name is Charles Adede.
And my name is Darren Collins.
Today...
Hi, Charles.
Hi, Darren. How are you?
It's been a week.
Yes, rainy.
Yeah, rainy week. Good to see you again.
Likewise.
Yes.
Likewise. And how is the wash thing coming along?
Oh, that's interesting.
Did he tell you he's a comedian? But excellence, that bit he left out.
That's where I just came from, was a writers' meeting for some sort of debate, comedic debate we're going to do. That's why came in third.
Yes. So he has like 50 lives. He does a million things.
Yeah.
He never gets
bored. It's like
bored.
3 things.
There's 3 things, right?
Which is closer to 1 than a million, but... No, I'm busy, but you're busy too. We're all very busy people.
I suppose.
Yeah, I wear a lot of hats.
Yeah.
And different glasses.
Yeah.
We have it's going to be a casual but very nice conversation today. We have a professional counselor in systemic therapy. Is that right? I'm saying it correctly?
Yes.
I'm going to try and pronounce the name. I've been practicing for the last 5 minutes. Wendy Aimée De Macker.
Okay, so now let me try. Okay. And you can vote on which one is better.
Yeah.
Wendy Aimée De Macker.
Okay.
Okay, you both had elements that were quite that I could relate to.
Okay.
But shall I?
Yes,
you can introduce yourself.
Yes, my full name is Wendy Aimée De Macker. And the second word is Aimé, French for the beloved one.
Uh-huh.
The beloved one.
Yes, yeah. And it was it's quite, I think, interesting. My father knew always when I was still in the belly of my mom that it would become a daughter. And he always said, this is going to be our daughter, and she's going to have the name Aimée. And that was the name of the most beautiful girl from Maastricht, from the Netherlands, that he had a crush on. So no, it didn't win. It didn't become my first name because my mom blocked that, but it became my second name.
I see, nice.
Yeah. That's there it all starts. Yes, yeah. Yes.
That conversation with your mom, how did it find out? I mean...
Yeah, I think they were quite open, to be honest, my parents. Okay. So, when it comes to that kind of things,
Fascinating.
Yeah.
Fascinating.
Yeah.
Okay, so Wendy, I'll just shorten it to Wendy.
Yeah, please do. Yeah.
Wendy is going to speak to us about systemic therapy, which is an approach to therapy. But our focus is largely going to be around relationships, family and relationships. We will... I'm sure there's quite a bit to uncover there. We hope to have a very, very interesting and easy conversation. But before we do that, Darren, a bit of housekeeping.
Sure. meimental.me is where you find all the stuff about us. It is our website that is sort of like the place, the one-stop shop for all the articles and helpful. Let me just recoup. I said a really long right there. And I feel like that was extended. meimental.me is where you go to find out more about Me, I Mental, the podcast, as well as our social media links and helpful tips and articles and just the links and stuff that we find engaging ourselves. And it's also where you can tell your friends to go to check out more about this. And we will be doing events in the future. We've done a few events already. And so that's just where to find out more about us. And so we're not asking for money or anything. Right now, what we're looking for is likes and shares. If you feel like there is a place for us in the space of mental health, Charles and I have just decided that we wanted to be additional voices, people who are curious, to just ask questions to professionals like yourself, and to learn more, and to just allow there to be another voice in the space for mental health. And so meimental.me is kind of the main place that people can go.
Yeah.
So that's sort of the house. Is that housekeeping? Does that feel like housekeeping?
Thank you. Yes, the house is clean.
Is the house clean now? It
House
looks
is
clean.
clean. Great start.
Yeah. So Amy, see, I'm calling you Amy now.
Yeah. It stuck to you, huh? Yes. Yeah.
Wendy,
Yeah.
Amy.
It's all good.
Yes.
Yeah.
So we always start by trying to paint a bit of a profile of our guest to our audience. We want to know everything about you, where you're born, how you got into the mental health space, what you're doing in Kenya exactly. Why are you here?
Yeah, why? Why? Yes. Wow, let's see. Well, it is very clear that I'm from the Netherlands. You will hear it in my accent. I can't shake it off. I'm from a little bit like a small village next to Rotterdam. And Rotterdam is, as you probably know, is like quite a little bit more the rough, raw city. Like, I always loved Rotterdam. I still love Rotterdam. I love the mentality, like, it's about your actions and your deeds and not about the promises or the words. So that is really in line, I think, with me.
The doers.
The doers, very much the doers. Yes, harbor city, like, just act normal, then you're crazy enough. Like that kind of, mentality. Father, mother, and then an older brother. So that's very like, I would say average.
The family unit.
Yeah, that is the core family unit. And I had like a brilliant childhood till the age of 15. And at the age of 15, there is a before and after moment because we got involved in a severe car accident. And that really turned life upside down. Everything that I knew was lost in a way. And I think that was also probably the biggest impact. Also now hindsight, I'm now 48, looking back, and that I think, okay, that determined probably also in which direction I was evolving as such. But I can come to that.
Were lives lost? Was there?
Yeah, there were 2 lives lost in the other car, and what happened is that my parents. My father got, for life, he got handicapped with chronic pain, like couldn't really walk that much anymore. And my mother, also chronic pain, but more through migraines and things like that. So it was a severe, like before-after moment, like, with everything that came with it. And I always thought, next to the fact that my parents really, how do you say it, how I would see it is the trauma that happened in that moment, it was never, ever, ever processed. So it got more and more stuck within them. And that changed everything, like, from that moment. So they were not, in my view, in my sense, emotionally available anymore. And I always thought, like, my goodness, I was 15, thank God. So, and I had this beautiful foundation of life. But suppose you're 10 or suppose you're 5, and this happens just because it just can happen like that.
Yes.
Like, what were my chances to develop and grow up like as an relatively stable person?
Yes.
I don't know what that really means.
Yes.
But I am very, very thankful for the first 15 years of my life and how that created that foundation.
Wow.
Like, so it made me really think, like, okay, so with all the chances I got from that period of time, like, wow, how would that be for children or youth? Like, let alone families, if you don't have that foundation. If
Was there any attempt by your folks to deal with it?
No, 0. And, probably you heard this already talking to other counselors. Let me be very clear. The counselors themselves are the most, like, are the people, we always say, like, the counselors themselves are the people who couldn't save a very close, like, family member, parent, like, so something on a very personal level mostly happens that leads to, I think, that you choose this profession as such.
Really? Yeah, I kind of wondered about that. I don't know if it's come up in the podcast itself that there was but I've noticed it. I guess I've noticed it in real life.
Yeah, yeah.
A tendency to want to get into the healing profession because
Someone who's had a positive experience
is
with
unlikely
counseling
to be,
because they needed it really bad.
Yeah.
Or the ones that decide to get into it, I suppose.
Yeah.
or those who probably didn't have any counseling and therefore they were searching.
How do you feel about that?
Yeah, I always say it's very simplistic. I couldn't save my parents, so I tried to save the rest of the world.
I see.
Yeah.
Well, what do you think about the profession being filled with people who are who maybe experience
Good question.
brokenness?
Yeah.
Good question.
I think it is so, I think, depending on how if it is really depending on the individual counselor, if you process it yourself thoroughly.
Yeah.
And if you do not, it can create truly more damage than anything else.
Yeah.
So you constantly have to be tuned in with yourself, and that's why, of course, counselors need counselors or counseling. You really need to process it thoroughly, and it is never an ending process, I think, because you go through different life phases. And how I reflect now on what happened, that traumatic event with all the consequences, is of course different than when I was 28. It's different when I was 18. So it's really always work in progress in a way.
And you keep making adjustments depending on the feedback and your new understanding.
Yeah, exactly. Because the layers within you, they're of course also always evolving. So new insights always come up. I would say.
I feel like I'm categorizing therapists and counselors, maybe unfairly, but I think of them as helpers. I think of people who are service oriented. Their profession is there to serve other people, and so I have this bias where I feel like all of those professions, whether it's a therapist, counselor, pastor, politician, all those people should experience the real world first and then say, now it's my time to serve, as opposed to just being totally into it all the way through. Because I feel like for a pastor can't relate to a congregation of people who are sheep herders, loggers, mechanics, and homemakers, et cetera, if they've only been men of the cloth since they were, confirmed at 13 or something like that. And a politician who just is part of a politician family who just grows into that. They're not in touch with the people that they're serving per se. And so a counselor to go say, who goes through that process you're describing, it's just you should come at it from a place of health. Seems like a better way to relate. I don't know. Or teachers too. Idea of someone going through academia and staying in academia. It's you don't know what it's like to apply. So I just love it when I hear about someone who at age 50 decided to go into one of those professions. And I go, oh, that's interesting.
Yeah.
You've been out there with the rest of us, and now you're going to help the rest of us. But that's a bias I have, I suppose.
Yeah, because there was always so first of all, I went to university, but I just also said, before we started, there was a very conscious choice to go to applied university, because I think you have different routes to also be on the ground and really experience life and create exposure. So that's really one of my drives also, that I think exposure is everything. I think, thank God, there was always discussions do you then need to go through hell yourself somehow to be scarred and be traumatized before you can start be of real value in this profession. And I believe that, thank God not.
Right.
But somehow indirectly, I'm with you, that it is helpful to go through stuff, and you would think that in the end nobody escapes. You would think so. And at the same time, even with people who have quite a smooth ride, I'm more and more wondering, but who? But okay.
Yeah, who is that?
Who is that?
person?
Like,
That magical
let me
person.
meet them. Yeah, like, yeah. So then still, I think exposure is extremely important.
Yeah.
Like, that's, I think, always in my whole lineup of what I did, I always, like,
Right.
pushed myself, like, truly to be underground in the mud, like, or almost the open sewage, just to sniff, smell, and then see if I can, like, swallow, digest, and see what it brings. Because if I don't know myself, how ever can I show up for other people?
Yeah.
Like that. So that real intense exposure, I think that is essential. Like,
So to clarify, when your opening statement, you couldn't heal your family, so you want to heal the world. So it wasn't your personal trauma that you were trying to heal. It was the folks, watching your folks react in a negative way from that car accident.
I think but this is also being. So you always remain the child of your parents, and I think that I think that's also quite. Yeah, that,
yes, it's true.
Yeah, like, doesn't matter how old you are, I'm still the child of my parents. Like, I think, like, the tendency is, as a child, you always want to help. Like, and it took me quite a long time before I started to realize, like, that how the dynamics intensively. Not only because my parents were physically, like, damaged, but they were also because they didn't process their trauma. I think also. When it comes to the emotional connection or availability, that they were gone. So I always say I buried my parents there at that time. They were physically there, but on all other levels they could not be there. They were surviving themselves. And I think in the beginning, as the first few years, you are focusing on your parents and how you can make it more easy for them somehow.
To fix it for them.
Yeah.
Wow.
So it took me quite a long time before I started to realize, like, oh my God, this has also an impact on me.
Right.
And it took me a few other years how deep that impact was, and how I was carrying myself in being 15, like, that's amidst your teens, going into young.
Were you
woman.
consciously trying to help your parents when you were 15, or?
Oh yeah.
Oh really?
Oh, I did. Yeah, I did. I did everything possible, in my view. That till the level that I would go to the GP, the general practitioner, and said, Mom is really in a state of depression. We have to do something. That went to that level, so till, like, in a sweet way, in a confrontational way, in an indirect way, in a very Dutch direct way, talk with my parents, and there was no way that they were ready for that.
Question. So there was your parents. What about you, and what about your brother? You were all involved in the car. Car crash.
Yeah, and this is also, like, my brother, 3 years older. I think part of the dynamics is that he somehow watched me in how I was responding to my parents, and he kept me in check.
Oh, really?
Like, yeah. So probably there's some fascination started there, like the impact of being part of a family and how family dynamics work out on different levels as such, like as being in relationship and family counselor, like, yeah.
So at some point you realized you need to take better care of yourself, and you also need to focus on just moving on. Is that what I hear you to say?
Yeah, it's like, I think at a certain point, but it was really like years later, is that I decided, and this is also very much also part of how you look at a system, is that remaining always the child of, you have to keep your parents where they are. There is that metaphor of the fountain, that the parents are there, the children are there, then yes or no grandchildren are there, and it is like that layers of generations, and the water flows in a fountain from one layer to another layer to another layer. It was very obvious that I tried to save my parents, so I would try to somehow go above them, out of love and out of care and out of concern and worries, deep worries, but it will never work. You go against the law
That's
of
such a
nature.
natural flow.
Yeah, it's not. It's like it will not work. So I had to let go. I had to let go and say, okay, this is truly their life. Even that I saw that they didn't process their trauma, that alcohol came in and things like that, it was not my call anymore. And I had to somehow, like, it's almost that you have to brutally feel that you have to cut
Tear
it.
yourself.
Yeah.
How old were you when that happened?
I was realizing for quite some time. Did also went into therapy a few times, but I think it was the age of 32 that finally I thought, oh my God, will never work. Like, it will not work for them. It will not work for me, and I'm allowing myself now to start really concentrating on myself. And let me be very clear, like, it was not that I didn't function. Like, I did function. I went to the colleges. There was no problem. I had a huge social network. Like, I went abroad and traveled a lot. Like, so that's the interesting part.
Yeah.
But meanwhile, in the background, like, yeah, this was always somehow there. Like, yeah.
Have you ever had in your practice? Have you ever had an opportunity to meet someone like you, who was in a similar situation?
Yeah, and that's also, and that is, on one hand, it is like, I think it can be a true advantage because I can really place myself in the other person's shoes.
Yeah.
And on the other hand, you have to be very careful
To not project.
because it's not about me.
Yeah.
So you have to, that is even the case that you have to be more in check with yourself.
That's how I feel about hosting a podcast. It's not really about me. Like, let's talk about me. Can we talk about me? but that's a real challenge, huh?
Yeah, no, but it is, I think, I had, like, when it comes, for example, to car accidents and the impact that it can have on the family, because it was through the car accident, when it comes to unprocessed trauma, when it comes to, like, felt unsafety as children in the house, with like parents who somehow disappear, like this, on an emotional level, that definitely, like, I come across that, like, and well, we see if there's any structure going to happen in this podcast. But I worked for years for a crisis team, an emergency team. That I think, okay, like, well,
So in fact, yes, let's go back a bit to what I want us to now discuss is, so we need to for you to just help us transition from there is you, there's the situation with your family, then there's you making a conscious decision to get into the mental health space.
Yeah.
And you have the motivation, that's clear. You told us, this is possibly what began to point me in this direction.
Yeah.
But then now, just the next steps, what did you do? You
Yeah. Well, I knew somehow that you know, when you're born in 75 and then in the 80s you had, like, this huge drought. Like, and that was always, like, on the television, like, how are these songs called? We are the world.
Yeah. It was Live Aid.
Yes, thank you so much. I was there, like so.
Were you there?
Well, no, I was behind the television, and I saw all that happening. Like, and I know that's what my mother told me. I asked my mom, like, wow, these children have, like, big bellies, which is, of course, Biafra. Like, and I got, like, my mother told me later that I was quite shocked. And somehow since then, I always wanted to, like, the white child behind the television come to the rescue. That was somehow like...
How do you feel about that, Charles?
Yeah, yes, exactly. Yes, I also because now after 20 years walking around in a context, for example, like Kenya, I'm shifted drastically in my view. But that was the innocent, like that spoke at that time. My mother always did a lot of community work, a lot of voluntary community work for also, like, the families that, for example, didn't have money to buy toys. So it was not a library for books, but a library for toys and things like that. So somehow there was always, like, my father was quite a socialist.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so that was also like that. So there was something quite put already in me. And I think like that all in combination, I always wanted to become a surgeon. And then especially working for MSF, Médecins Sans Frontières, and that was my goal. I went through secondary school, had indeed like the subjects that with the mathematics and the physics and the chemistry, so I could lead to taking that step. And the first year I was like in the Netherlands, they do random, I don't know how you call that, picking, like that you can get into medical school. Like, yeah.
Oh, okay. Some sort of lottery almost.
Yeah, somehow like a lottery.
Okay.
I was not in. So I went to university to study the first year of psychology because I knew always that I wanted to work with people. And then probably more subconscious at the time with everything that was going on with my family, it was somehow a logical step. And then the second year I was in, and then I thought, oh my God, this means that for 10 years I have to study. I'm not that intelligent. I have to lean into my discipline. So do I really want that? Yes or no? And I thought, no, that's too much. So I went indeed into like furthering, like, and then going to applied university, like, because I wanted to be more on the ground, like where the action was as such.
Perhaps just for viewers who may not, or audience who may not be familiar with what applied university, what's the difference between it? What is an applied university? Like a technical university?
No, it's way more concentrating on like that you have like internships, apprenticeships, so you create real stretches of exposure, like diving into a profession as such.
Yes.
So it is way more pragmatic and practical as such. So you have all the theory, but at the same time, you also, in my first year, I had 3 months that I had an internship with ex-convicts who were in a rehabilitation trajectory. Like most co-students went to work with babies, and I went to work with the ex-convicts. So yes, I love to challenge myself in that. Yeah.
Yes, and how was that? Briefly, how was it?
I survived. Yeah. And they said after 3 months, and then we had like a small moment. I will never forget that there was a farewell, and they literally said, "Yeah, you survived because we decided that you could survive." I said, okay, thank you. So
nice.
And not that there would be any literally physical aggression, but they could have made my life hard, like, and somehow they decided not to, like, And of course, I was intimidated, and I was. Can I say that? Shitting my pants?
Yeah.
Okay. Yes. That. And did I?
Tough guys with tattoos.
Tough guys.
And,
Tough. Yeah. Like tough guys. Yeah.
So then you get into the profession. I think from our previous conversations, you firstly got into social work.
Yeah.
A bit of. Can you just touch on that?
Yeah. So when I did my first year of psychology, I felt that it was very interesting. But again, it was the sense that it was somehow not connecting to the reality that I would love to dive into. Then went into social work. That I thought, okay, that's then definitely a profession that's. Yeah, on the ground. Yeah, you're not somewhere in an office talking about people or meeting people, but still it's like on a distance as such. And I thought as a social worker, I will be in the midst of everything that will happen. So, that's what I did after that for 4 years. And then after that, I topped up with evidence-based methods. So... there was a master in between that I almost forget. like the master was about...
You breeze through it, so it's so easy, you keep forgetting about it.
So the master was connected to intergenerational approach or therapy. That was quite interesting in Amsterdam, very intense. while I was working for a crisis team, and then I started to work in the forensic psychiatry. So working with
CSI. That is crime scene investigations.
Yeah, but then with the youth and the youth who have with deviant behavior, youth with like that they would be arrested, sometimes in jail. Like and it was like quite clear that I worked very closely together with probation officers, and that it would be like, or you stay a little bit longer in jail, or you get intense like family counseling therapy. So, and then they would get me, like, I think that's the intergenerational therapy was definitely the master, was definitely helping me out in that sense. And after that, I topped up with evidence-based family counseling method, and now lately evidence-based couples counseling methods. So methods that are based on research, like which I am really, really in love in. Okay. Oh, love with, yeah.
So we will get to that a little further downstream, where we get all technical, because I really, really want for to understand what this is. Mm-hmm. But what are you doing in Kenya?
Yes. Why am I here? Yeah, of all places in the world. Yeah. So first of all, I love the Netherlands. I always loved my work. My friends are there. I have a strong network. But somehow, in course of time, I also fell in love with Kenya, like completely unplanned.
When did you first come?
20 years ago in April, so April 2003. After I finished my my social work, and I started to top up like my education, I was always a little bit fascinated, like, okay, so people of social work, like, how can you create more value in their experience, but at the same time also in the projects that they can connect to when it comes to internships abroad, because I went myself to India to work with street youth. I think it was quite irresponsible how I went there. Oh, okay. It was like not well prepared. It was not like that. I was like truly went through an intense like curriculum in. Like, what does it mean if you go to a country like that, also being white and coming from a very, very privileged position? Like,
How long was that trip?
Sorry?
How long was that trip?
6 months.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Indeed, the short time. Like, really, what can you really create of value? Who are you even when you're like 23, going and working with street youth? So, in all honesty, after that experience, I had so much more questions and so much more like ethical questions that I thought like, okay, I'm not sure what I did there, let alone created value. Yes, it enriches and boosts my CV, but what about the youth that you work with there? So it felt such as an imbalance that I wanted to look into that if people take that step, can you prepare them in taking that step a little bit more prepared, or a lot more prepared than I did, and not only before but also during, and especially also after in the integration? And can you then let the projects lead their request, and then you start matching instead of the Mzungu flies in and thinks that the Mzungu can always help or can always contribute. So I was introduced through a friend to the slum here, Matara, part of Eastlands. And she was already working in Matara. And we had this idea of somehow an international placement agency. So way more like offering a more intense curriculum when it comes to guiding that if that step is being made by social workers to start with, like, can we then offer that guidance? Would I do it now like I did it then? 20 years ago? No, definitely, because I lessons learned, like, yes.
Well,
but that was the first reason why I came here.
Sorry, so lessons learned, and that's a good place to also just ask. So, what are some of the things that there was India? Mm-hmm. You shared some of your take on your experience in India. What about Kenya? When you initially came and you tried to set up, what did you find out about?
That because in between I even went to Ghana to work with street youth, and I was like still thinking, yeah, this is somehow, yeah. When I came to Kenya, and especially when I was introduced to Mathare, I thought, oh my God, it is me who is learning here, and I'm learning from the guys that are there, living, working, raising their children. I was start to become very, very, very humble, I think, and realize that, if I come here, it is them who inspire me. It is them who, show me how resilience looks like. It is them who show me really, because I think, I always say thinking is for free, and how your mind thinks, that can be, that it can make you or it can break you. And they were showing me, that the mindset in the end, and next to a lot of other factors, but the mindset is everything. So I got really almost addicted maybe, and let me put fascinated, what is it in that very heavy and challenging context that I saw young people who were not only surviving, but they got on a level of living, thriving, inspiring, that became leaders. And in all honesty, yes, I did a lot of projects with them, and a lot of initiatives together in co-designing, co-executing, co-implementing came from that. But they were always my silent heroes in how they are from day to day, were not only carrying themselves, but also carrying their friends and also carrying a community forward. So I don't really believe that people help purely for the other. I think that everybody has there must always be an incentive for yourself. So people who say, but I'm here purely to help you, that I think, yeah, maybe you must go home and think about that and rethink about that. There's always something for you that drives you and that you do what you do. And as long as you're not honest there, then it doesn't feel right. So I think, that the creativity, the innovation, the way of thinking, the resilience, the dynamics, that was very much inspiring me. And in the process, thank God, they start to trust me slowly, step by step, because I was quite persistent. I came back every year, and from that, slowly, that built trust. We started to collaborate. While they were always leading, they will say okay, but it took me quite some years and also quite some trial and error. Before also in me started to shift. That was not instant there.
So when was it just pure social work, or were you at that time beginning to get involved in what would be therapy work?
I think it was. In all honesty, now hindsight, I'm wondering what the first years. I think I was just observing and being introduced to be honest. And maybe on paper it looks like I was contributing something, but really,
were learning.
Get real, really,
sucking it all in,
yes,
and trying to find your sea legs.
Yeah. And at a certain moment, I think when I was myself also a little bit further in time, as being a family counselor also in the Netherlands, and also I would do a lot of trainings with youth when it comes to their level of moral thinking, anger management, name it. at a certain moment, I said to the guys that I knew there, like, hey, I'm a family counselor. I work with youth with quite severe acting out, deviant, addictive behavior, and I include the families and the system around it to somehow try to avoid that they go back to jail, or try to avoid that again they're back on the police at the police station. There's some expertise there maybe that we can tap into, that I can think along. And I also train like on with youth, and I make use of the peer like influence when you bring different youth together and how they start to positively influence each other. Maybe you can think about it. I can be of any like use. And then they said, okay, we're working with this target group, with this challenge, and shall we sit down? And then we started to co-design, let alone like execute and implement these training programs.
Yeah, and that is under Vizazi Foundation.
Yeah, which was for a few years. In total, the training programs were total for 10 years. Like, and last year we like very consciously dissolved it. Like, so there's no foundation anymore.
Okay.
Yeah, that's.
But you felt, again, from our conversations, what you said is you began to feel that now there is, people have built quite a bit of capacity, and they are capable of mostly managing. There's already sufficient capacity in most of those spaces. So the people who are running the show, you have confidence that they'll run the show.
They already run the show for many years in a way without me. Yeah, they're the ones who know exactly.
They're your heroes.
Oh yeah, they're like and they're really the silent heroes. They do the work on the ground day by day in all the circumstances, and they are. I don't believe in experts, but to be honest, they are the experts of their communities. So yeah, it was purely that very temporarily, I think I was a visitor, and having some access to like certain like different methodologies or training programs, but to customize it in close collaboration to that specific context. And then I would like train trainers, and then I would fade out as soon as possible. It can never be, it was never about me, and it can never be about me. It was really about...
You contribute whatever you can,
yes.
But you trust that, they will now take it up and do the best because they're better placed.
Yeah, and it's not even, it's like, it goes a little bit maybe further than me trusting them. I saw, like, by, working or with them, or like just also being around, that these are true, how they say it, leaders in a way. They are there, and they are the ones who want to, like, how do you say it? Like make a difference in their community. So I think it's in that way it's interesting. Like I never like thought like, oh, this must happen.
Yes.
No, they wanted to make it happen, and I was just temporarily there, like
contributing
here and there in this very small snippets. Like but the work. They wanted to make a difference. They wanted to like see how far they can reach when it comes to like indeed this kind of services where there are safe spaces and they can talk about sexuality, anger, all this kind of like trauma, small trauma, like trauma treatment project for smaller children. And it is in that sense I was just very lucky that they took me on board. It must have cost them quite some energy, in all honesty. Yes.
Yeah, we're hoping at some point, I'd reached out to one of, I'm hoping at some point he'll find time to come and we just have a conversation so that we also get to know what it is they're doing there. I think it was very, very fascinating. I recently did an article on what I called the story of mental health in poor and marginalized communities in Africa. And I was just sort of highlighting the challenges in rural Africa and then also the urban challenges. There's different, dynamics there.
Yeah.
And just mention briefly, the more I would call them grassroots level interventions to try and just manage mental well-being, but obviously there's still a need to even just make people conscious that over and above the food people try to provide and all these other things, mental well-being is also like something that is critical. When whatever you're contributing, also consider contributing towards people's mental well-being. Yeah, so that was the gist of the article. And I'll be happy to also have that conversation with them.
Yeah. And I think there was, of course, for years quite a misconception when you say mental. They all think about Matara Mental Hospital.
Yes.
Wow. The moment that you because I think the power of these informal settlements is that everything happens in groups already. So the youth groups are excessive, so you can make use of the positive, how they say it, vibration that is among this youth and among these peers, but because naturally they come together as such. So and then it is therapy is a little bit less loaded these days, but still and the moment that your package is this is a training to create, and it's not a trick. You don't but it is like a training that you create more awareness.
Yes, like self-awareness.
Self-awareness, that you create more ownership, that you become more conscious of okay, so if I punch that guy in the face, it can lead to this and this and this. But if I don't punch it, but have an alternative and how I can respond and cope, then this and this, it can be really a matter of life and death, in certain situations. So how can you increase that conscious thinking? That I think is true ownership as such. And it starts with that you create these spaces where you truly can start opening up. That's, I think, is already huge, as such, Yeah.
Yeah. So how come you're still in Nairobi?
Yeah, that's also a good question because, this is. So it started there. No, late 2015. I thought after more than 10 years, I would always buy my own ticket, compile my leave days, come here, let's say once a year. And then after 10, 12 years, I wanted to kill the Nairobi bug. I thought, let's give myself an OD Nairobi, so in the home.
Okay.
That I would be fed up, done. I just thought, let me give myself so much. So I budgeted myself for a year, came late 2015, bought a mattress at Tuskys at that time, lived at a friend in Borobudur, and I thought, I'm going to be hardcore. I'm going to be so fed up of this place. That's what I really tried. And then after a year trying, I was just not ready to go back. It is...
Hooked. You got hooked.
I got even more hooked, yes. So I somehow surrendered. That plan didn't work.
Okay.
And I had the feeling I think in the end, it's a certain level of energy that pulls me in over and over. It's quite special, I think.
Sound familiar, Chala? Coming into 15, expecting to be for a year, and now
that's
8
your
years
story
later,
as well.
yeah, I did the same.
Yeah.
I'd been there a couple of times before, but 2015 was the 1 year plan.
Oh,
And
maybe there was something in 2015.
it's the water. They were
Yeah, is it really?
put something in the water.
Yeah, like oh my God, yeah. Yes, we're in exactly the same boat. Like
Yep.
yes. And would you recognize it as something with the energy, or what was it for
Oh yeah,
you?
it's this intangible sort of like I tell people, like if you're on Adderall in America, you don't need it in Nairobi. There's enough stimulation to keep you
Exactly.
buzzing. You're buzzing. You're on a
Yeah.
different tempo, and it's weird to go back home, and I don't even know if it's home anymore because everything's so chill.
Yeah.
It's like everyone. I feel I'm the most relaxed person in America when I go back to America. I'm like, this is easy.
Yeah,
There's
exactly.
something about it. There's something
Yeah.
about the buzz going on here.
Yeah.
It's not easy. Like
No.
it's not like super fun all the time.
No, and it's not smooth, and it is
No,
like,
it's a
and it
huge
is confusing, and it is like. But for me, curiosity is one of my, I think, my main. I don't know. Okay, I think curiosity is one of my biggest drives in me. Like, if I don't feel curiosity anymore, like just the end.
Yeah.
Like, and I get always confused here, and I love it. That I think, huh? Like, and I've got more questions and answers in course of time. It is. There's something there that's.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you ended up setting up practice.
Yes, yeah. So because I budgeted myself for 1 year. At that time, still going every day to Matara. At a certain moment, I thought, like, if I really want to stick around here, and I want to have my cappuccino, because that was also that I thought,
It's
like,
also important. Yeah.
it's very important. Like, my good cappuccino. Like, that I thought, like, I have to start then earning money. Like, not having a sugar daddy. Like, this is it. It's up to me to do. To pull this off. No clue what I was getting into, to be honest, like, because it's so non-transparent. So no clue where to start in the system, but I thought I was like networking a lot at the same time with like counselors and psychologists, and like figuring out, like, is there a niche when it comes to pure family counseling? And my specialization is family counseling, and then working with youth between 14 and 24, like with the more severe, challenging behavior. And they said, well, like, because nobody really wants to work with that specific target group, let alone like from a more family approach or systemic approach. So I started with one client just to also test the level of my English, the second, and then suddenly I thought, okay, this can maybe work out. Like, So now for 3 days a week, I have my private practice. And then next to that, I was always fascinated as part of a system. You have, of course, a mini system, and that's the couple. Even if a couple is not longer together, that are like especially working with families. And I was always fascinated by what happens between the father and the mother, and how does the bucket of being partners, also ex-partners, how does that influence the bucket of being parents, and how is that communicating with each other, like how does it influence each other? And in the Netherlands, they always said, but you're not a marriage counselor. So the moment I got independent here, I thought, like, well, then I'm gonna also look for evidence-based methods when it comes to couples counseling.
I want you to clarify something.
Yeah, please.
So what you're saying is there is some sort of there's a distinction between marriage counselor and couples counselor.
No, I don't think so. No.
One is some sort of species of the other. Like couples counseling, marriage is part of couples counseling, but couples are not always married necessarily.
You talking about family counseling and couples counseling, or
Yes.
couples counseling and marriage counseling?
No, I'm just trying to draw a distinction between. So, do you have a situation where I'll set myself up and say, I'm a marriage counselor, and therefore I don't deal with couples who are not married?
I think that can be a choice.
It can be a choice.
Yes, but it would never be my choice.
Oh, I see.
Yes,
I see.
never ever.
Okay.
Because I don't believe in the standard, first of all, family format. I believe in all kind of alternative family formats as such. So, and I then also don't believe in one way of I don't know if that sounds a little bit say like consuming like a relationship. I don't know how to say that more and more. This is like,
I don't know
there's
what's
so
going on.
many. There's so many.
I don't understand Charles or Wendy.
I thought like, must I use that word?
What's going on?
Yeah.
We trying to distinguish between a married couple and a non-married couple in therapy?
So she said something which I found interesting.
Okay.
Because she was, correct me if I'm wrong, obviously, but she was highlighting that she's a couples therapist. And when she was in the Netherlands, they said she was not a marriage.
Right.
Yeah.
So then in my mind, it just occurred to me, okay, could there be a distinction therefore between, like a marriage counselor and a couples counselor,
Yeah.
That was
Yeah, no, I get you. And I think indeed like that some people can choose only to work with people who are married. But I think that is a very narrow excluding approach of like being like more, maybe I can call myself then more a relation counselor. Okay. And it doesn't matter if it's between parents, if it's between siblings, if it's between parent and a child, if it's between like a
grandmother and
the
relationships.
Or and the romantic relationships. My
goodness, the topic name: how to build a sustainable romantic relationship. That's our topic. That's what we're talking about right now, everybody.
I threw that out of the window.
Oh, you did? Oh.
Yeah, I did. Yeah.
I was being slightly sarcastic anyway. Yes.
I drew your attention to page 3.
Oh, sorry. Ladies and gentlemen, we're going to page 3. All right, let's get this on track.
Yeah.
The power of systemic work.
Yes.
That's still the focus. We try.
Okay.
So, somewhere in there, we have transitioned into the space of systemic work, haven't we? We've begun to discuss systemic work now. Would you want to just tell us a bit what systemic work is? And particularly with in the context of relationships.
Yes. Yeah, and interesting enough, so me being a relationship and family counselor, how I view systemic work is that I always say no man is an island. Mm-hmm. So we're constantly like being surrounded by not only our direct, most intimate loved ones, and that can be like from different generations where you're coming from. Mm-hmm. So this is where the 3D model comes in. Like you always come from different generations. It can also be the family, like parents, grandparents, great-grandparents, where you're coming from. It is also indeed like on the level of next to parents, you have your siblings. But you also have your yes or no, your partner in any shape or form. You also have like close friends. You also have your colleagues. You also have like your or co-students. You also have like your neighborhoods, and then your community, and then on a bigger level you have the society that you also, and all the dynamics that are happening there and that is influencing is part of you. And it is almost that you can like draw like invisible threads, I think, if I say that correctly. Mm-hmm. Like, and that everybody is connected to everybody. Mm-hmm. So if you would take a step, like now being here with me in this moment, like, and you would take a step to the left, somehow we have to
There's a dance.
Yeah, there's a dance. Mm-hmm. Or I can go with you, but I can also push maybe, like, but somehow there will be like a moment. It is not that I would like sit still where I am. There is always movement, and in those dynamics, that's my view of systemic work. I'd always try to see the person who steps into my space. Always try to see the person in a 3D model as such. They're also the father of systemic work is Salvador Munchen, and I think he was brilliant also to put out almost that model of, they call it the ecosystem, like that you see somebody in the middle and then you have all these layers, around him, and then if you integrate and also the intergenerational, then you have even like different layers coming from that more like vertical like approach. So I call it always the 3D system in how I look at people. Yeah.
Okay.
So systemic work is in a way like making use of these powers and these positive powers around a person. And what I always very, very much like advocate for is that sometimes it was quite devastating that also in the Netherlands I would get files that were so thick, and then the youth of 16-year-old like was sitting across me, and I thought, oh my God, if this can be written about you, and mostly it's a copy-paste of what is not working, where the challenges are, what is problematic. And I was always thinking from his perspective, mostly I was working with young men, like how must it be that a file is there like on your desk?
It's a catalogue of his problems.
So of his problems.
A big problem.
Yes, exactly. And I would always like shove it aside and say, okay, I'm so curious about you. Tell me, who are you? What are you good at? What do you get excited about? Like, what is your dream? And mostly they were so numb that they, because, or surprised, or very suspicious, like this cannot be real, what is happening here?
Yeah.
Like that you truly, sincerely, that somebody steps into their space and say, okay, we're here together. Yeah, you can't get rid of me that fast, because mostly it was being like pushed upon them by law, by probation officer. So let's start somewhere, and let's start somewhere positive, but also working with the families around it, like who can be reintroduced, or like an uncle who was always very important, and how can you make use of the positive forces, the stakeholders as part of like working with youth, and truly believe in them with the whole lineup, like that could be when it came to severe, sometimes deviant behavior. But yeah, where is your focus? So for me, the real power of systemic work is believing in the power that you can always find in the system, in the ecosystem around an individual.
So what I hear you to say again is, firstly, you have to see a person.
Yeah.
Don't see a problem.
Yes.
Firstly, see a person.
Yeah.
Okay. Affirm the humanity of the person.
Yeah.
And then what you're dealing with is possibly challenges that this human person is facing. So you're not immediately labeling them with, as problem people with, just different.
No.
And then you try to check within that context whether there is the possibility of connecting this person within to people and resources around them that can begin to help shape their transformation.
Yeah.
Have I understood?
Yeah, and then mostly what happens is that if you have like one parent or a guardian to start with, that because that is at least that you mostly have to have on board. If you have two, great, even more luxury. And mostly what I would meet is, suppose one parent or two parents that they said they're completely exhausted, no clue what to do anymore, would almost say, he's yours, good luck with it, bringing back Wendy has a new hard drive, or or just take it, we don't want anything to do with him anymore, because they were completely exhausted, let alone with sometimes very challenging situations that they would deal with. Rent that they cannot pay, like water that is almost closed off, yes or no psychiatry, like within themselves, or addiction. it is like mostly I worked with really multi-problem like families as such. What my approach always is that I always believe it doesn't matter if you're from Mathare or Muthaiga, you always want, in the end, maybe hidden and very much tucked away, you always somehow still love your child, even if you don't want to feel that anymore, because that is like a space where
you're wounded, maybe, so you feel like you're unhealed.
What is the like?
But there's still love in there. You're still rooting for them. You want the best for them.
You want always the best, like for them. You always want that somehow they succeed better. Like somehow they are like walking through life in like that. That I think is the drive of generations. That's like that every parent that I met always wants the best in the end, or even that the child is even in a better place than themselves. Even when I was working for the crisis team in the Netherlands, I saw a lot of abuse, neglect, name it, but it was never out of a true vicious. I never met a parent who said, I'm like beating up my child because I enjoy beating up the child. It was mostly because they had no clue what to do anymore, didn't like be taught or modeled any alternative, completely feel powerless. They're like so deeply concerned that then this like was the only way that they thought they could still somehow have an influence or control. Yeah.
Is that the same here amongst the people you have? So two things. Firstly, is that almost similar, your experience in Netherlands and here? And then do you, for the most part, have you been mostly dealing with that age group, or have you found opportunity to also use this in situations that are not necessarily in that parent child setup? Yes.
So maybe that's something very to clarify. Like when I was attached to Mathare, I would never ever counsel somebody. I don't think that's appropriate or not up to me. Like I think it's not my place. So I cannot talk about like how counseling looks like. Family counseling looks like in a place like Mathare. That's not my place to say anything there. Of course, through the training programs, I worked a lot with youth, but it was more based on peer-to-peer and like, the private practice is connected here for people who can afford counseling. That's what I love to do, and that is how I also pay my bills. But first of all, what I love to do. And there I work with or individuals or families or couples now. Like,
and you still deploy systems therapy?
Working with families. And in all honesty, I don't need a family physically in my space to work with a systemic lens or through a systemic lens. If you would walk in tomorrow in my space, I constantly screen you through this 3D more systemic eco model around you.
As opposed to what? Like, what would be the alternative? Like, if I'm hearing you correctly, the systemic work is basically looking at the person, but all the connections that they're connected to, and finding a tool within all of their connections to help move them through to the future or whatever they're trying to accomplish. Yeah. But as opposed to
what other approaches are there? In other words, right?
Sort of take me through something that might be specific that sets this apart from another kind of method.
For example, if somebody, let me see if I can come up with it. If somebody would walk in and says like, let me see if I. For example, there's so. If somebody would walk in on an individual level and that person says like, that's already, if somebody would walk in and says like, I want to set my boundaries like in my family, like as such, and especially when it comes to like my mother. Okay. Like that is of course already way more from a systemic like approach that you can start. I could approach it probably like dive into more in CBT level, cognitive behavioral level, like, okay, so how do you think? Oh yeah, your self-worth is not that big, so let us concentrate on that. Let us like boost your self-confidence, like challenge your negative thinking.
Okay.
For example, that
Okay.
can be part of it, but I would more also approach it. What is happening between you and your mother? Like, what is your position in the family? Like, where are you when it comes to like youngest child, middle, or like what of tasks did you always like were like driven towards you? Is there something between your parents and your mother is like pulling you close to her because somehow the marriage is completely like at stake? And you have to vote for her because like that comes with so much anxiety in mom that you are being like pulled towards her. Is there a communication when it comes to like you and your mother, or with you and your parents? Like how does it communication looks like? Did you ever had like is there a culture of like talking about what certain things like affecting you, yes or no? Like, so you can, I don't know if this is a good example. Like,
No, I'm with you.
Yeah,
okay.
Yeah. So it is like, even if the mother would never come with like the daughter, is that you can even imagine, and like sometimes I say like, yeah, suppose your mom would sit in this seat. Like, yeah, what would you now say to her when it comes to you and how you're doing and what you are in need of? So you try to almost like restructure in a way like how, the family structure would work better for them, or in the hope. Like, so it is, I think, less about the individual and what the individual can do in improving, whatever that really means, like within themselves. That can be part of it, but it is definitely also that you constantly go back to the relational like aspects between you as part of the system as such.
So you sort of lead them through discovery of where they're at.
Yeah. And how they can start making use in a way like of what is there in a positive way, and what is not there, if they can. Sometimes you have to grieve, like, for example, a mother who cannot like connect to the daughter on the level that the daughter is so longing for. That can be quite a grief process, like that the mother is consumed by or her own problems, or is like limited in a way that she was never modeled in how that looks like. Like, it's also, there's also quite a lot of generational like differences, of course, and how things are experienced. For example, dealing with emotions, becoming aware of emotions and things like that. So there can be a lot of grief, and how do you then accept that reality that you're facing without that you constantly are coming in conflict with, like, for example, a mother that maybe really like wants to be close to the daughter, but has no clue how to be truly close on that emotional level to the daughter. So you are making use of the reality as such. You try to twist the reality where possible, like in a positive way, like from the individual, but also relational. Like, for example, if the brother is never really in the picture, how is there something between the siblings that the brother can be more in the picture, or that the brother can be more seen? So there is more imbalance when it comes to like that the daughter has to carry everything, like as part of the family.
Okay. Interesting.
I remember watching.
It's a little bit
yesterday.
different, I think.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah, but I'm not sure. Yeah, how it sounds. Yeah.
It's wildly specific to my situation at the moment.
Pray tell. That's fascinating.
I kind of had to pull away from mom a little bit in the last since dad died, and I felt like I couldn't connect. But she wants something that I can't, and I sort of like tagged my older brother, like, your turn, because I was the youngest, so I was always there, but never could really actually get close.
Yeah.
And there's something, just there's a block, and I finally, I don't know, I don't want to get into it necessarily, but it is. I can see where a systemic approach would be very interesting, because there are so many different dynamics, and having to navigate that alone, and thinking in terms of like, what can I do, and not thinking in terms of like, what does this actually look like in the space? Where is mom actually coming from? Do I need to, the point was grieving, like I may need to just grieve the fact that I'm not going to have that relationship that I wish it was, and I may not actually be capable of offering what she thinks she wants from me, you know? And so, it's really
we can get gridlocked, like when it comes to, you come, of course, with your longings as being her child, and she comes with her maybe yes or no expectations, like, and of course also her longings, and that can get gridlocked if you don't like, if you keep your focus there, like as such. Well, I think indeed, like if you, it's almost like that you, almost from a bird's eye, like, oh my goodness, I want to have a relationship with my mother. How can I stay faithful to myself and, of course, my longings, but also facing the reality that some longings probably, maybe cannot be get to the level that I'm truly desperately in need of, but can I then grieve? Do I allow myself to grieve? Because that also sets not only you free, but it sets also her free. And then you can also start seeing what is there instead of what is not there. And we can sometimes get quite stuck what is not there. I don't know if that makes sense.
Definitely makes sense. And the question is, what is there? Because I think, so for me, like I just want to be completely 100% all the time honest, and that's not necessarily the way to go. I don't think it'll leave me more dissatisfied because of her inability to actually go deep with a conversation. There's something there where I don't have a conversation like you and I are having with that I do with my mother. For some reason I can have it with all my siblings. But why not that particular person? And so my desire to be completely honest will actually hurt myself more, because it's going to end up just stopping. If I say all the things, she'll be like, just change the subject, or look away, physically look away, or just okay, I just put myself out there. Just, so that's
very painful.
That's not effective. But at the same time, why do I have this expectation? I don't know.
Well, but you're allowed to have that expectation, and that is part also of the realistic that you like. If you start, you can't push expectations away, but you can allow yourself to have these expectations, but then also in the realization, in the reality as such, that maybe it will not always be. How do you call that?
Met.
Met, indeed, and that's part of the grieving. That's the reality that you then face. Which. What's quite often also helps is, and not because you constantly have to have understanding for everybody, but like your mother is also coming from her layers around her.
That's a huge thing. Like I did actually in the last month, like be able to. I couldn't figure out how to have a good conversation. I was like, man, I visited home, and so I was with her for like 10 days, which is like the most in years. And I was like, how I cannot have a good experience. It's never going on. And then one day I just asked her about how did you learn to swim? And then she just like opened up and started talking about swimming lessons and like who it was and what that person was in her life and et cetera. And now we're having a conversation, but it's all based on memory, her memories. But at the same time, I get to see how she felt about something. Oh, a feeling. Oh, there's a feeling in there. Okay, that's good to hear. It's not negative. It's actually a positive one. And so, I sort of, but it's such an effort. Like, how do I crack this code? Because I want to have a good time too. And she just wants my presence. I want to either have I want to be in the moment. And that's not but so that's what worked. But,
and sometimes it is helpful. And again, I'm not there to give excuses to behavior, not at all. But when I was working with youth with quite severe behavior, I don't believe in excuses, but I really believe in contextualizing, and that can lead to a more like an explanation and a more deeper understanding. From a deeper understanding, also there's more a space of that you say, oh, now it makes more sense. If like a person starts to make more sense, also there's more space for empathy. That you say, oh, so my mom grew up in a householding where there was never ever like a chance that a talk was
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
talking was maybe even dangerous, or talking was like, a luxury, or talking was like, I don't know. Yeah.
It's like this idea that we have the same blood, that somehow we have the same experience, but we
Yes.
don't. We shared like 18 years together, but there was, a whole lifetime that she had before that.
Yeah,
it's completely
exactly.
contextually different.
Yeah. And that the moment you dive a little bit into that, again, not to excuse people of certain behavior, but that contextualization, and everybody, you can contextualize them. Like, again, from this 3D model.
Yeah.
Then you think, oh, really? So, like, for example, quite some people are being raised in unsafe settings, like in the homes, and emotions are danger. So, because emotions would always lead to then escalation, eruption, yes or no, reinforced by physical violence or any other type of violence. So you see quite some people that you don't go into that space.
Right.
So they keep everything practical, straightforward, very much okay, this is what is clear, practical, that's it. So then the next generation comes, for example, and they think let's talk about it. It is really from generation to generation. There are small revolutions.
I suppose
happening.
so. I mean, but is there an entire generation that doesn't have introspection? Because I feel like all of this is contingent on someone actually being able to break down their own thoughts and break down their relationships and be able to see it from that. But I feel like not everybody does everybody have the capacity to go through this in an intellectually honest way?
I think it's quite I think so in the end.
Really?
Yeah, but it starts.
Have you met my mother?
I almost want to say, have you met my mother?
Yeah. So how does it work? Because we're age mates. Are your parents still with us?
My mother.
Yeah.
And my mother is one of the most challenging characteristics out there.
Right.
Yeah. So no, I hear you.
Yeah.
Yes. And I think that's also, how do you say it? I think for me it is very helpful that if people do not want to go there, it starts with a certain, interesting enough is also how I'm trained and how that became part of me, is that I don't really believe in that you have to be motivated. I just need an inch maybe of a reason why you step, for example, into my space, and then I can build from that. There must be. But there must be somehow a little bit there, or that you get stuck, and that isn't a drive. Or there is more positively, there is a curiosity. That's then definitely
Sure, I get that.
Yeah. But there must be somehow a little bit a willingness. It can be very thin. What I feel is that there is way more possible than you would think on the get-go, but it is also that people. I think the real core of counseling is that you build that rapport or that alliance. That engagement is the core of backbone of everything. So if they feel, and you cannot fake that, it's not a trick, that sincerely you're just there to discover together, or sometimes I say out loud brainstorming. And even if people would come in, for example, youth that would come in, I want to get rid of the nagging of my mother as soon as possible. I said, great, man. I think that's a very healthy goal to set. And then, of course, the next question is, how do you get rid of? What must you do different? I have to go to school. And then you can jump into that. But I think there must be somehow a little bit of a thin layer of I want to get rid of things, or want to stop certain, or a curiosity. I think you can build from that. Yeah. If people do not want to go there, I think because they're so extremely deeply scared.
Is it not wanting to, or some people are some people just not actually capable?
Because
I'm a little bit of a pessimist sometimes. Sometimes I'm just or can this go anywhere?
I think
everybody's got it.
I think so, yeah. But I really
believe. But you'd have to be in your profession. You'd have to build that rapport.
Because
Without, no, so is it like the thing that helps you get on with the business of doing it, or because there is a possibility that some people, is it possible for some people to be so damaged by whatever circumstances they are, to the point that their minds play such games with them that you can never really get through to them? They're always blocking you.
I'm constantly like, I am blocked in sessions for very good reasons. And then people block each other constantly. Like, and it is a very healthy, normal, functional,
Oh, it is healthy.
I believe that every behavior comes from a place that if you really start to look into it, that it makes sense. So in that sense,
protection.
Yes, Thank you so much. Yeah, that is the word. Like, no, it is really like, and that's the fascinating part. The longer I practice, the more I do not believe in diagnoses or disorders. Yeah, they can, how do you say it, create more clarity, like as such. I believe more in non-pathology. I believe that every behavior has an functionality and an intent, and that therefore it comes from a healthy place. Because protesting is one of the ways how we survive as species. How we are like wired to connect, and if that connection is in danger or it feels like a threat because maybe my loved one can reject me there, you protect or you protest. Like, so it makes all sense.
So the challenge, perhaps, I'm putting it out there for conversation's sake, just to try and clarify something here. So the challenge would be for people who maintain what I would say a more optimistic, more open-minded mindset around this, you often then feel like you might expose yourself to harm when you don't have a clear picture of what is actually going on with the other person, and what they're doing is actually hurting you. So if you had the understanding, then you might manage yourself better, because you have the benefit of understanding what's going on. But many people don't. And they're facing this constant, challenge. And it sometimes just destroys them. So that is also the bit which I'm never sure how the balance. Do you therefore acknowledge that in some cases it's best to be pessimistic, therefore you protect yourself for conversation's sake? Or do you go and you're open-minded and positive, but if you're not skillful or knowledgeable enough, it might hurt you? Or these people, if they are pathological enough, they can actually take advantage of your open-mindedness to manipulate and scheme.
Yeah, but and I love your approach. But what you're skipping, I think, is that people are not. We think that the cognition is driving our behavior, but in the end, emotions are driving the behavior. So we think that we all have it somehow, that we have the overview, but in the end, we don't. So we are really like. We think we're so extremely, how do you say it, like we are just primary beings.
Practical, pragmatic, and thoughtful. So we see ourselves as practical, pragmatic, and thoughtful. And
thoughtful, and we have it all. We
have it all figured.
And it is just not how it is.
Just big wet sacks of emotion.
It's like I think it's like it is so mind-blowing the longer I practice, is that if you really, and it is way more based also on attachment theory, if you really start to dive in that what is most important to us and what and from that core of being that drives almost every behavior, then suddenly everything starts to make sense.
So what? No, I totally agree with you. And what I agree with totally is this: when you eventually see it for what it is, there's this big aha, and everything makes sense.
Yeah.
And there's even a sense of balance. But before you get to that realization, there's just trauma and turmoil.
Yeah.
And many people often never get to that point where they understand what is going on.
Yeah.
And because of that sort of ignorance, or they can hurt
blind spots.
They're blind spots. You keep hurting people, and they keep hurting you for a very, very long time. So, because within that context, how does a person who's feeling vulnerable and who's feeling perhaps that they're likely to be getting hurt by others, how do you approach this? Are you open-minded, or do you protect yourself until you realize that it's now getting safer here, I can expose myself?
I think that latest, I think there are let's have an example. For example, somebody that one of your friends, for example, that you see, she or he always ends up in quite toxic relationships. That you think, really, what happens there? Like, that is like a beautiful source of data, where and that the person itself start to acknowledge, like, my goodness, I always end up in this same somehow dynamic. Somehow I'm getting stuck here. Somehow I always that's end up in this toxicity. Like that's a pattern as such that you can start start to understand on a deeper level. And start to unpack. It's almost like distilling and then dissecting, and then start to create more and on the deeper level understanding. Like, so in the end, your real how it comes out is one level, what people see, but on the inside, there's this whole turmoil indeed of emotions, of fears, of core fears, and in the end, the core of the core fear of human existence is that you're rejected and abandoned. Like, because we cannot survive as beings, being all on our own. So that is like almost like the subconscious, like that people are not really aware of. But suppose you can work with a person like that, and again, I don't need another person in the room. I can work with that person individually, constantly putting it back in relational. It's like, because when I would step towards my partner, and suppose my partner says no there, or suppose don't understand me, or it even feeds that misunderstanding, then I feel more disconnected, and my goodness, I don't want to feel this. So what do? I go to the bar and let my car being washed there.
The things we do.
That's why there's so many car washes with bars, I believe. So here in Kenya. And you go there and you somehow shut off, and shutting off is, you still probably, it is lingering and probably it is there, but we are very powerful in just not trying not to feel as such, and we have all these escapes, all these distractions. We have alcohol, we have drugs, we have bonus partners or chips funga, whoever you want to call it. You have work. I think men are definitely also hooked up to work for a specific reason, not to go there. But that's because that is scary. Suppose you go there and suppose you stay a little bit longer in that you feel that you want to be desired, that you feel that you want to belong, that you feel that you want to be loved. Oof. That is way more scary and way more vulnerable than going to the bar, having a drink, and having a chit-chat with somebody. I don't know if that makes makes sense.
I think maybe some of the one of the things you said is in terms of the generations. My generation and my father's generation, everything was very mechanical, and it was just about provision. And provided you had a roof over your head and he paid your school fees, that was it. That was the sum total of the relationship. And I think maybe it was even tougher for them when they were growing up. There was possibly no conversations about emotions and that sort of thing. Now, for us, maybe we got to become more self-aware, and had more information, and maybe also even dabbled in psychology and just inquiry, more personal inquiry about our inner life. Sorry?
How did that even happen? Like, because my dad was the same way. Like, there's no conversation, there's no introspection, there's just go to work, do this, that. How did you and I end up? How did we be born of those parents? How did we become the way we are? That doesn't even make sense to me. And my dad used to say it. It's like, I don't know where you kids came from. You guys are all intellectuals.
So I suspect my view is, we probably had a lot more access to information than they did, and also the luxury of just spending time, inquiring about such things. Because I think for them, for the most part, everything they were doing was to earn a living. It's like they're focusing so much of their time and effort and just provisioning for you, and so. That is like survival mode par excellence.
Yeah.
My take.
Yeah.
So then we come along, and there's a lot more information. There's a lot more cross-cultural like interactions and that sort of thing, and our world opens up, and also. And we begin to become aware of an interior world as well.
Yeah, maybe the pyramid of Maslow, that the basics were somehow a little bit established as such.
So now you move to...
So you can go to like
the next level of things.
It's the luxury of going to other levels of existence. Beyond pure the surviving.
Beyond the survival? So you want to meet other needs. So the challenge though is when you... Because you begin then to have expectations, like you want a hug from your dad.
Yeah.
You want to go
let's
hug
have
him.
a chat.
He'll go like, hey. What's wrong with you? We don't. That's not how we roll. Dude. So you end up feeling really like hurt, and you feel like a fundamental need of yours hasn't been met. But they feel awkward. They feel like you're not grateful for all the sacrifices So that becomes the
I think there's something so beautiful like about generations, because every new generation is like has a new almost task to take up, and it is for the betterment of the next generation, but I think it's also learning the previous generation something, even if it's not clear if they pick it up yes or no.
What complaints are your kids going to have about you?
I suspect
you're too emotionally available, got in my business too much. Like what?
I'm not sure. My daughter we talk a lot, so we are very open, and so I'm not sure she'll have much to complain. My son, on the other hand, might think I'm a bit stiff with him. Stiff with him, and I'm not sure whether I'm not just like doing what my dad did with me.
In which way, stiff? What?
Like that very you're a dude, strong.
Yeah.
That thing. Yeah. So I think I keep finding myself trying to make him man up, and sometimes I come on a bit strong, and I see that sometimes he looks at me quizzically like.
Can't quite figure you out. On one hand, you're into jazz and art and meditation. And
yes, and then on the other hand, I'm like this guy he's not. So I think for him it might be the same issues I had with my dad.
Yeah.
And what are you learning from him?
I just think he's a really sweet boy. He is extremely concerned with other people's well-being. He has a very soft heart for people, and he really cares about people. And he's not putting it on.
Right.
It's not an act.
It's really coming from
It's
the
really
core.
coming from that. And then the other thing I find interesting is that the things he likes, he likes. The things he doesn't like. So he has, in a way, an ability to set his own.
Like he knows who he is.
Yeah,
in
very
some
authentic.
ways,
Yeah,
yes,
it
like
sounds.
the things he likes. He
Yeah.
likes the
Yeah.
things he does.
Yeah, he doesn't.
I sort of I would call it diplomatic. Maybe it's not diplomacy. Maybe it's just people pleasing and all that. I try to accommodate everything.
Right.
Yeah.
So that's the thing.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah.